Okay, can you hear me, guys? Good morning. Yeah, okay, so we will start our discussion. Kindly let everyone to enter the meet now. Kasi isang oras lang tayo, sayang naman. Okay, so this will be the continuations of our discussions in respiratory system. Oh, by the way, before I start, on Monday we will have so we will have the long quiz on cardiovascular only. So respiratory is not included. No, this will be different. Okay, so if we still have time, then we can have a short quiz on the respiratory. But then again, we will try to finish the respiratory system and hopefully start digestive system until next week. Ayan. Okay, so please listen. So I have 40 slides for this module 2 actually this is module 3.2. So for the nasal cavity, guttural pouches, and larynx and trachea. So it's part of the conductive pathology. Okay. So last meeting we discussed on the ano ba yun? Defense mechanism. Yan. So defense mechanism of the respiratory system wherein in each subdivision, okay, the subdivisions of the respiratory system have their own way of responding to stimuli, especially mga lethal or sublethal stimuli. And of course, we also discussed the responses of some changes. Okay, if ever this part of the respiratory system um, succumb to some kind of exposure. So like for example, subretinal injuries, like for example, yung mga mga foreign materials, ganyan, and how the conductive system responds to it. And we also mentioned how hemodynamic changes are the more common manifestations, okay, of the conductive system, particularly in the mucosa. Ayan, so we mentioned about the hemorrhage, hyperemia, what else? Yeah. So what else? Yeah, yun yung mga last part, okay, of our discussion. Okay, before we started this one today. Okay, so hopefully you still remember some of the responses, especially on the defense mechanism. Ayan. So up to this point now, we are more of the inflammatory conditions affecting the conductive system, particularly the nasal cavity. And then I've mentioned about the trachea, yeah, the sinuses also, the sinuses, the trachea, the larynx, or the guttural pouches. Okay, and up to the bronchi. So since up to the bronchi airway, so that's the end of the conductive system. Okay, so for the inflammatory conditions of the nasal cavity, so we have here types. So these also applicable, I mean, parang follow the descriptions of the general inflammatory conditions depending on the exudates that can be observed. Okay, and of course the pathogens, okay, that can be seen, okay, causing these diseases. Now, in the exudates observed, we have here identified 5, okay, potential exudates that can be seen or described affecting the nasal cavity. So the first one is the serous one, and then followed by the catheral. We have also the fibrinous, the purulent, and the granulomatous exudates. So if you relate these exudates to the type of reaction, so always know, if you still remember your general pathology in terms of the exudates, serous is the most common. Parang this is the primary reactions, particularly the acute phase of the reactions of serous, so watery, edematous. Okay, so that's how you describe an acute inflammations. In these exudates, the reaction is more of the cause of or productions of the reactive submucosal glands, particularly since it is a nasal cavity, so we have a lot of glands in there in which fluid, yan, can ooze out as a reaction to some irritants. Yan. So, last meeting we mentioned about mga irritants that could parang stimulate, okay, the defense mechanism of the conductive system. So, some of the mga irritants, mga chemicals, mga air, pollens. Yan. So, gases, mga toxic gases or noxious gases. So there are a lot of possible foreign materials or substances that could stimulate the mucous membrane present in the nasal cavity. So the implications of that is more of mild irritation. Okay, take note if it is more of a serous. Ayan, so serous reaction as a production or output of the reactive submucosal glands on the serous cavities or in the cavity, nasal cavities of the sinuses of the mucous membrane of the nasal cavity, and that implicates mild irritation. Now, that serous exudates can further or progress into become catarrhal. So this catarrhal mucous secretion is due to ang tawag dito, very active, okay, that's why there's a hyperplasia here, a very active goblet cell at the same time, increasing the number of goblet cells. Why? Why this could be? Because it implicates a continuous irritation. Okay, ibig sabihin, the exposure of that animal to a certain stimuli from the outside, maybe on the outside the environment, is still there. So it's not yet parang eliminated. Okay, so this is a continuity or continuous exposure to that, let's say, sublethal or parang irritant or gases or noxious something, okay, that could more severe, okay, in terms of or in comparing to the irritations that cause serous exudates. So dito, so there is continuity of that exposure. That's why the implications of chronic exposure, chronic irritation that may lead to a moderate injury. Okay, so for the fibrinous one, this is more on severe kasi in our general patho, when you think of fibrinous, there is this liberation of components, okay, of the plasma. Okay, so aside from that, ito yung pwedeng may breakage, okay, and then ng mga blood vessels in which some of the fibrin are being leaked out, or let's say liberated on the surface or in the adjacent affected area. Okay, so as type of reaction, as mentioned here, there's leakage of fibrinogen, okay, from the blood vessels. So typically, we've mentioned about how a typical substance or a substance can pass through, okay, into its adjacent tissue or connective tissue area, do the interstitial spaces, no, through parang passing out from an intact vessel, or let's say because of the vasodilation, so it has more parang capacity or more able to pass out kasi medyo luluwang, okay, ninipes yung integrity of the blood vessels. That small substances like fluids or other, like this one, fibrin, can pass through that intact blood vessels. Okay, so that means that could also imply severe injury to mucosa. So aside from an intactness of the integrity of the blood vessels that could able to liberate fibrinogen and other substances, I mentioned about breakage. Okay, so ito yung sinusundan ng hemorrhage, di ba? So yung hemorrhage natin, hemorrhage could occur from in an intact vessel or a certain breakage or obstruction of the blood vessel in which meron talagang total break, okay, or broken blood vessels. Okay, so wherein there's a escape, okay, of blood. So when we talk about blood, so there are other components, okay, that can be found in the blood. So aside from the blood cells that present in there, but also with the mga organic or inorganic substances, and fibrin is one that can be found in that plasma or in the blood. Okay, so that means that could imply that a severe injury happen, okay, as parang initiating this kind of injury. Now, purulent. So this is quite different from the three. Ayan. Kasi in purulent, we have the presence of pus or formation of pus or nana. Okay, so that's accumulation and exudation of neutrophils. So the neutrophils here is the inflammatory cell plus, yung pus kasi, plus the neutralized invader, if it is a pathogens or chemicals or etc. that initiate, okay, that reaction, no? So, yun yung pus. And if there's a pus, okay, so possibly, ayan, meron tayong mga pyogenic bacteria or pyogenic organisms included in there. So, sa pus natin, the neutrophils, na mga foreign invaders, pathogens, and of course, yung mga fluid, okay, of the inflammatory response. So, these are the component of the pus. Kaya siya ganon. Okay, so the pus might varies in color depending on the pyogenic bacteria or pyogenic organism or microorganism invaded in that particular affected area or dun sa lesions produced. Yeah, and for the granulomatous, so you've heard about granulomatous in our general pathology. Okay, so when you say granulomatous, there is the hallmark of granuloma. Okay, so that's granuloma. So there's accumulation of macrophages, lymphocytes, plasma cells, and connective tissue. Okay, so the granuloma is a composition or accumulations of these mentioned entities. Okay, so if you still remember, ask you what might be the component and how this component organized, okay, in a granuloma. Okay, di ba? So that's one of my questions in our general pathology. Okay, so there, the affected portion is being surrounded by mga giant cells or large cells. Okay, so nasa gitna yung necrotizing tissue together with some of the pathogens included in there. And then it is being covered or encapsulated by the connective tissue, organization of the connective tissue. So that's why meron tayong parang mass or that's called the granuloma. So if you hear granuloma, it's more of related to chronic infections or chronic inflammations. Okay, so another implications to granulomatosis or granulomatous, there's the pathogens are resistant to phagocytosis. So can you think of microorganisms that love to be engulfed by macrophages to proliferate or leave the immune system activity? So most of the time, you hear about Mycobacterium. So this mga Mycobacterium na to, they could be engulfed by the macrophages, but then again, they are not really dissolved or neutralized in that or die being engulfed by pathogen or these macrophages. But then again, they could proliferate in that. Kaya medyo matagal yung kanilang treatment, so napakahirap. Okay. So the two types of exudates can be found such as mucopurulent, fibrinopurulent, or fibrinonecrotic rhinitis. So ibig sabihin lang that these exudates could exist, okay, in a complicated manner. So pwedeng in complication or mix, okay, exudates depending on the exposure, volume of exposure to the pathogens, degree of exposure to pathogens, and of course the immune capacity or immune institution or yung body constitution in responding to exposure to pathogens of the host. Okay, so as you can see in the picture, so we have different manifestations of that exudates. And commonly or frequently, if there is respiratory infections somewhere or some part of the parang facial features can also be affected because of the openings. Okay, mga connections. Yan. So those connections that are connected in the respiratory system can also be invaded, and some manifestations can be found such as may mga blockade, may mga mucous, mga exudations, and sometimes pati yung sa mata can also be affected. Okay? That's why one of the manifestations, mga conjunctivitis, ganyan. Okay. So example of purulent rhinitis. So this picture shows you how, okay, yung severe, the purulent discharge, okay, in the left nostril. So as it can be described here, it's yellowish and quite medyo matigas, not matigas, but medyo makapit na siya, okay, on the left nostril of a horse. So this example was identified as strangles. Please note that in remembering or in describing diseases or describing disturbances affecting different systems, included pathogens can be or should be remembered. Okay, so ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo that you should have your good background in bacteriology to give you more idea on the possible manifestations of these microorganism to a specific or identified or affected animal. So in here, strangles. So if you hear strangles, the causative agent is this a gram negative or gram positive? Hello? Hello? Naririnig niyo ba ako? Gram ano?
Yes po.
Gram? Gram alin? Hindi ko yes, Nicole? Please. O baka may ata. Wala akong ata nare-remember sa micro. Okay, this is a gram positive, strep. Okay, mga Streptococcus equi. So this is particular Streptococcus species affecting horses. Okay, the species here is the equi, causing strangles. So very important to, okay, sa mga horses. However, this is ang tawag dito, preventable, and yeah, may mga ano kasi may mga vaccinations na pinapakita dun sa ibang sa ibang bansa. Okay, about this one. It can also be treatable because it is caused by bacteria, except if there is already an existing resistance. So yun lang yung problema natin dyan. Okay, so basically, this could affect horses, okay, foals, yan. So pwede rin sila maapektuhan. So the description, okay, the description of the disease is suppurative. Okay, so purulent suppurative rhinitis. So this is large exudations or the amount of exudations of pus, okay, ay masyadong madami. That's why there is abscessation. Okay, the formation of abscess or abscessation. Aside from that, meron din tayong lymphadenitis, okay, na affected. So most of the time, this lymphadenitis can be found yung mga lymph nodes that are distributed somewhere in the thoracic cavity. Okay, so if this becomes systemic, it could be possible kasi it becomes systemic, then all can be affected. So depending on how the intensity or the virulent, okay, so yung virulence or virulent factor of the organism. Okay, so another description, some horses develop purpura hemorrhagica. The purpura hemorrhagica is described as vasculitis. So this is the inflammatory conditions of the blood vessels involved. So sabi ko nga, these strangles have potential of systemic infections. But then, syempre, the vasculitis here is more of dito muna, okay, organized in some part of the respiratory system, especially those affected near to that area. Okay, bacterial metastasis to the internal organs, as I mentioned a while ago for the systemic infections, become a bastard strangles. Thus, that metastatic bacterial infections, okay, ano yung pwede nyo makita doon? Siyempre, some of the this is a pus forming, no? So some of the parang, ano kasing tawag mo doon? Yung mga materials of infection niya, okay? Yung mga compound or pus, ganyan, it could be distributed, okay, in the other part of the body. Okay, so one worst sequel for the strangle is the involvement of retropharyngeal lymph nodes. So dito, yung mga nandito na sa part ng neck, which could be compressed, okay, especially the nerve, laryngeal nerve, causing laryngeal hemiplegia. So that's bad. Okay, if there is laryngeal hemiplegia, okay, ito yung pwede mag-cause ng roaring. Okay, so according to here, struggles only seen sporadically in North America, but then again, it can be found in other parts of the world. In the Philippines, wala pa naman ako na-mention, but horses are present here. Okay, so there's a possibility or none, parang walang concrete data, but then again, they might be affected with these strangles. Okay? Ayun. Okay, so another cause of mucopurulent rhinitis, so we mentioned about horses, now in dogs. So you see here a copious or copious mucopurulent discharge from the nostrils. Could either be unilateral or bilateral. Now, as you see to this affected dog or on this affected dog, the viral infections could predispose to this kind of mucopurulent rhinitis, okay, or secondary bacterial rhinitis. So I've mentioned previously, especially in our first part of the discussion, no, ito, last meeting, that diseases affecting respiratory system can be multifactorial. And viruses typically can cause mga mild, depending on the immune system of the animal to respond to these viral infections. That viral infections can trigger, okay, the opportunistic bacteria to cause a disease. And these are called the secondary organisms that can cause more severe lesions. And sometimes this bacteria could originate from the microflora or some vulnerability or exposure from other bacteria or microorganism outside. So yun yung para passage nila because of the immune system of the animal parang reduce or ang tawag dito, parang humina. Okay? So they become more predisposed to these different secondary microorganisms, especially bacterial pathogens. So this can lead to secondary bacterial rhinitis. And those common organisms are Bordetella bronchoseptica. Bordetella is a microflora. Okay? E. coli also. Okay? Streptococci or streptococci and staphylococci are also microflora. Okay, so these are the common pathogens that could parang invade, become opportunistic, a microorganism to the dog, okay, being exposed to viral infections. Now, some of the viral infections are causing respiratory infections in dogs are canine distemper or these morbillivirus for the genus, canine adenovirus or CAV2, canine parainfluenza virus or CPI1, and then the CAV2 and CPA1 is the most common. So if you heard about the anti-peste that is being given to dogs, okay, yung kanilang 5-in-1. So in that 5-in-1, canine distemper, adenovirus, and parainfluenza are part of the vaccine or vaccination. Because this can lead to or pwede kasi mag-create yan ng syndrome which is the kennel cough. Ayan, can cause the kennel cough. Okay, so the kennel coughs not only due to viral infections, but also with the other secondary infections. Yeah. So that is one manifestation of the kennel cough in the part of nasal cavity. Okay, so nagkakaroon tayo ng rhinitis. Okay, mucopurulent rhinitis. So extensions of the parang ito yung isang manifestations of a kennel cough disease. So in pure viral infections, lesions are minimal except for hyperemia. So basically, I mentioned that one as part of the pathophysiology of how okay, viral infections affect or enters or manifest in a certain individual affected with this. Okay, there is hyperemia. It's a common parang reactions, primary reactions. Now, when viral rhinitis get complicated with opportunistic bacteria, they become, yan. So, depending on that bacteria, if it is pus-forming or not, no? But in here, it's more of pus-forming, no? So, the lesions produced is more remarkable. Okay. Sometimes, if the virus is identified, like for example, canine distemper, so this could also affect other system. That's why it is reflected here that canine distemper, however, non-suppurative encephalitis and enteritis can be seen as its manifestation. Okay, in your virology, have you had your virology or not yet? Oh, tapos yun na yata yun eh.
Tapos na, Doc.
Tapos na. And then on the virology, there are a lot of viruses that are more of systemic in features, right? And canine distemper can affect not only one system. Ilan? Pwedeng 4 or pwedeng 5. Depende kung ano yung kanyang cause. Could be nervous, integumentary, respiratory, GIT. Ano pa yung isa? Sa special senses yung isa. Anyway, there are 5. I think there are 5 systems that can be affected by your canine distemper. Yan. Okay. This is how it looks like when the nasal cavity is being exposed to these foreign pathogens or these foreign pathogens or mga foreign invaders. Okay, yung mga pathogens na to. So this is a picture of a utini showing you a cut sections of the upper. Okay, ito. So upper facial feature. Okay, dun sa may part ng palate niya. Okay, so in which you can found the rhinitis and sinusitis manifestation. So if you will notice, no, it's very red here and a portion of it shows you some parang intense production pero makapal. Nakikita niyo yung cursor. I think you cannot see my, ayun, ano to? Can you see my cursor? Hello guys, naka-PDF kasi. Nakikita niyo po yung cursor? Hindi. Yung tinuturo-turo ko, ayun. I don't know how to do it in PDF. Anyway, yung reddish portion dito, syempre very vascular, di ba? Very vascular yan pagdating natin sa part of the conductive system. And anyway, of the respiratory system. Plus, the sinuses which are very engorged. And if you will notice, there are some portion na may whitish and very excessive in the parang wet and thick. Okay, so that is how it is being described in the picture. Okay, yung hemisection, okay, ng upper features, okay, facial features of the affected animal. So in this picture shows you the following manifestations of that description here, the macroscopic description. So you will notice here that there is an excessive production of mucus from hyperplastic goblet cells. So typically, in a serious or in a mild infections or mild irritations, okay, or nandun tayo sa catarrhal infections or catarrhal descriptions, so there's an increase, okay? Dito, pangalawa dito sa goblet hyperplasia, so we have what we call a catarrhal exudates, catarrhal exudates because of the increase in the production or exacerbated production, okay, of the mucus. So in this chronic rhinitis and sinusitis, so there is increase in the mucus production that it could be a reflection of a catarrhal, okay, inflammation. Okay, so ito yung picture ng isang catarrhal inflammation. Okay, so ito yung nakita yung picture kanina that if the respiratory system is affected or mayroon tayong respiratory infections, other portion of the, especially in the face, okay, of the animal also affected. And some manifestations can be found. Even in the nose outside, the external features and the eyes can be affected. So sample, rhinitis, okay, and with corresponding conjunctivitis naman in cats. So as you can see in this one, so very quite advanced, not advanced, but pero medyo nasa moderate cause to severe cause. Especially here, meron na tayong conjunctivitis, okay, even affecting the eye, okay, inside. So may whitish ng formations inside. Okay, so the common rhinitis and conjunctivitis in cats. So in viral, we have the feline calicivirus and feline infectious rhinotracheitis. These are the most common. Actually, it's always identified. Okay, chlamydia, the Chlamydophila psittaci. So Chlamydophila psittaci has a potential zoonotic. Okay, potential zoonosis. Yan, bacterial, Bordetella, Escherichia, Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, same with what we mentioned a while ago. And for mycotic, particularly in cats, this is the Cryptococcus neoformans. So, affecting especially dun sa upper respiratory system. But it can go through the lower respiratory tract, which is up to the lung. But definitely, most of its manifestations, makikita nyo dito sa may upper respiratory system, being reflected, affecting also the eyes or the conjunctiva, and some keratitis happening here, depending on how severe and exposure to that, or yung volume, okay, ng dose or dose ng pathogens enter the animal. So these are the common cause. Okay, and of course, differential diagnosis. Okay, so differential nyo, these are the first ones. So maybe you can check for these common causes, okay, as part of your differential diagnosis. And syempre, other diseases are not excluded. Okay, so it can also affect or it can also predispose that into this even parang complications, okay, of this manifestation. Okay, so mucopurulent rhinitis showing you a discharge in the nostrils, so thickened discharge. So wet and quite organized discharge, okay, which can be found in the surface of the nostril, and also you can see some parang opaque, okay, features bilateral eye. Ayan, nakikita nyo yan. Tapos meron ding exudates. So may mild conjunctivitis. Ayan. So you have here the feline rhinotracheitis and feline calicivirus with a mixture of Cladiophila species. Ayan. So these are the common feline rhinitis, synovitis, conjunctivitis manifestation. So some fungal infections like your cryptococcus, as I mentioned, can be associated with this one. So as you will notice now, this can further progress into this type of manifestations. Even turbinate necrosis can be found, lalo na pag may saccharomyces siya. Ayan. So you have also here, ayan, exudates and necrotizing features, okay, of part of the turbinates. Okay. So in other species, feral viral infections are acute and transient but can predispose to, ito yung mas mahirap, Bordetella, Pasteurella, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Okay, so in these features, you exposing bacterial infection. Okay, so since meron tayong mga lysis dito, maybe Pasteurella, Multocida are involved in here. Okay. For cough, so this is suppurative rhinitis. You can see here the organized pus or abscess, okay, in the concha or metastasis of this affected animal. So you have the mucosal surfaces. Ayan, ito yung mucose. However, not hyperemic. Okay. Pwede rin dito na since medyo matagal na, nasa subchronic na to, kasi marami ng mga connections ay marami ng mga accumulations. So, since one of the response of the respiratory system, especially conductive, is to cough out, sneeze out. Okay, so ito yung mga possible makita nyo. Sabi niya, cough into nasal cavity is the other part, okay, of this output of that manifestations. So, histological manifestations or histological confirmations can be seen, okay, or can be checked to check whether it is a polymorphonuclear leukocytes, okay, on this area. Kasi pwede rin tong, kasi it is a mass, there is an abscess, we cannot eliminate other differential diagnosis. Okay? So yan yung dapat nating tandaan. So we have here a fibrinous rhinitis in a calf, which is affected by infectious bovine rhinotracheitis. This is a viral infection. So there's a thick flakes of fibrin on the mucosa. So this is fibrous exudations implying a severe damage to the blood vessels, in which led to the escape of or leakage of the fibrinogen. Okay? And then polymerize into fibrin because it will, pag na-polymerize kasi siya, this will promote yung clotting. Okay, so yung clot. Okay, formation of clot. So this is just an example of superimposed bacterial rhinitis with IBR or infected primarily of IBR. Okay. Now, if you want to confirm the microorganism present in here, then you check, siyempre may differential ka, then you check your possible tests that can use to identify or describe the microorganism. So you can do bacterial culture or yung mga serological test natin, like FAC. Okay. So another is granulomatous rhinitis. So you will notice here the variations in the granuloma. Okay, my small, my coalescing, my large granuloma in the nasal cavity. So this is how it looks like, and I mentioned this one, the organizations of the granuloma, in which the necrotic center is found in here, surrounded by the macrophages and other large, okay, inflammatory cells. Ayan. Okay. And then it is being organized by connective tissue. Okay, that's the fibroblasts. Okay, so these features, ayan, yung granulomatous rhinitis natin, are typically associated with organisms that could survive phagocytosis, such as I mentioned about Mycobacterium, other fungal organisms such as Cryptococcus and Blastomyces. Your Cryptococcus and Blastomyces are also included in the systemic mycosis. Yan. So another is allergic rhinitis, yan, especially in the temperate regions with nasal granulomas. Yan. So it's super, ano yun, parang it can also trigger, okay, yung reactions of the immune system. Okay? That could lead to stimulate the production of granuloma or organization of granuloma. So this is another pictures of the granulomatous rhinitis. Yan. So this is the histology. Okay, in here you see here the polypoid nodule. Ayan. So it looks like a tumor, sabi niya. But histopathologically, this revealed multilobated granuloma. Ayan, which contains round bodies encapsulated, okay, by a thick connective tissue. That is how you're going to confirm for the diagnosis. And parang eliminating other differentials. So yung mga confirmation natin, confirmatory diagnosis is through histopathology. Demonstrations of the microscopic, histological microscopic descriptions of the tissue affected. So yung upper picture natin dito, ayan, so you have here the inflammatory reactions that could be due to mycotic infections and yung hypersensitivity reactions. So I mentioned about allergic reactions a while ago, no? So this can be, ayan, so can be confirmed through physical examinations and biopsy. Okay, inclusion body rhinitis. In your virology, I know you have encountered about inclusion body rhinitis in pigs, okay, especially yung mga young pigs natin. So the cause of this is cytomegalovirus and also one of the differentials in the atrophic rhinitis. Yan, so histologically, you can see here the inclusion bodies, okay, intranuclear inclusion bodies. So kapag intranuclear siya, ano siya, DNA or RNA family? Intranuclear inclusion bodies. Hello? Naalala niyo bang biro? Can you remember if it is intranuclear inclusion bodies? Ito ba ay probably RNA virus or DNA virus? Hello? May nakakaalala ba? Can you still remember if manifestations or the production of inclusion body happen to be in the nucleus or in the cytoplasm, it can also be related whether what family these viruses are under. So since it was mentioned here, intranuclear inclusion bodies. Sa tingin nyo, ang cytomegalovirus or herpes viruses are RNA or DNA? O, assignment nyo. Sige nga. Hindi kayo sumasagot sa akin. Okay, so in these features, no, so in these features, no, the piglets, the infection generally goes unnoticed. However, this can cause transient rhinitis and epiphora. So the epiphora there is the tearing of the eye. So parang basa. Okay, now you can notice that bilateral or unilateral in piglets. So sometimes you can see merong mga mark, okay, na may tumutulong or minsan madumi dun sa area na yan. So you need to assess that. Okay, it might really give you an idea the animal might be suffering from or exposed from some infections. So sabi ko nga, your inclusion body rhinitis is one of the differentials that of a respiratory infection, okay, in pigs. So not only caused by this herpes virus, but also with the other one. So that is how you need to assess, okay, in detail what might be happening, okay, to the animals. So always remember to record yung mga common changes. Okay, if you are now in the field, no, ito yung mga common changes niya makikita. What is good in systemic pathology is that you can actually classify the possible common infections or diseases on this system. That in doing your differential diagnosis, you might focus on more of those possible infections affecting this system para hindi masyadong madami. Kasi all possible marami or multifactorial yung dating kasi ng disease. But then again, what help you in systemic patho is that you can identify, classify a little more of the focus of these pathogens to this system. Same with the other system. So dito, so since we are speaking about respiratory system and what make you parang limiting, okay, your differential diagnosis to a more diverse differential diagnosis that we are on the conductive portion, okay, of the respiratory system. So, ano yung mga common muna? So, these are the first one to assess. Ayan. But syempre, sabi ko nga, other infections are not excluded. Okay, they can also be included here. But then, dun sa ranking nyo ng differential diagnosis, you first or seek first to these common, okay, causes of diseases in the respiratory system, particularly in the conductive system of respiratory tract. Okay, so in here, there is no mortality when it caused by inclusion body rhinitis, but okay, immune depressions can occur, and that immune depressions might give, okay, a way for the bacterial infections to go, okay, or to invade. Yan. So palagi, ulit-ulit lang yan. So same instances with the other parang considerations or conditions. So grossly, so since it is caused by a virus, so there is hyperemia. And examination of the nasal mucosa shows typical cytomegaly. That is the large cells because of the inclusion bodies. So that is the basophilic intranuclear inclusion bodies that can be found in the nuclear area or nuclear part of the affected cells. Hence, they are called cytomegalovirus. Okay, now, another is the atrophic rhinitis. Now, atrophic rhinitis is a bacterial disease. This is more of severe than your cytomegalovirus. And this atrophic rhinitis is quite common in animals, especially in pigs. Okay, more on pigs. Okay? Kasi basic yung pigs natin dito, yung mga microorganisms here that form or cause atrophic rhinitis. Now, why is it called atrophic rhinitis? That all from its manifestation. Nagkakaroon ng atrophy, okay, yung develop turbinates niya because of some dito, changes. Okay, meron tayo kasing sinasabi ditong invasions, okay, ng other parang myriad of bacteria, particularly of Bordetella and Pasteurella. Yan. But we cannot eliminate the mycoplasma kasi mycoplasma is a common, okay, microflora also. Okay, some invasion of the viral, okay, and some differential to vitamin deficiencies. Some are genetic and some are environmental. In short, these are the causations. It is a multifactorial cause for atrophic rhinitis. In your microbiology, especially in bacteriology, you discuss, I think you discuss on the atrophic rhinitis in which Bordetella and Pasteurella are the parang common, okay, or culprit for your atrophic rhinitis. We have also the term kasi progressive atrophic rhinitis. Okay, this is more of a co-infections. That's why ito yung sinasabing toxigenic Pasteurella motocida, type A and type D. Okay, for the serotype niya, okay, which produces lysis, okay, and of course the Bordetella bronchoseptica. So the cause of this, okay, in the nasal cavity is rhinitis, atrophic rhinitis. Okay, and may expect that there is notable resorption of bone. Kasi ang ginagawa, meron kasing potential yung Pasteurella natin as osteolysis. Okay? So, sisirain niya yung toxin na yan, sinisira niya yung developing bone, especially sa bata. Okay, that's why the most common manifestations of this disease is in mga post-weaning. So, different degrees of atrophy are shown in the next slide. So, ito yung different degree in which you can use, okay, to classify, okay, the severity of infections. So, ito ay through ano yun, cross sections, okay, these sections ay premolar sections, okay, dito sa affected snout, okay, showing you the different turbinates and the severity of the dissolution or osteolysis. So in here, kung titignan nyo, medyo complete pa to, okay, it's more of complete, but there are some degenerations of the affected turbinates. In this one, so the lower two, okay, is showing you now a larger portion of the concha. Okay, yung lumen dito. So may degenerating na of the turbinates. So in the two snout, okay, below, so if you will notice no, mas grabe itong nandito sa ano kasi wala ka nang makita. But then again, yung pangalawa naman, there are some problem in the left portion of the turbinates here. Ayan. So parang merong siyang deviations na nangyari dito, but then nagkaroon siya ng compressing, okay, of the other turbinates in. Okay? So in this feature, no, the sequel of atrophic rhinitis in pigs or affected pigs may be pneumonia. So that's common. And the type of pneumonia or the description of pneumonia is aspiration pneumonia. Why aspiration is that? Because if there are larger opening in the turbinates, no, so the potential or the possibility or the capability of the turbinates to trap, okay, some larger particles. Kaya hindi na niya magagawa because of this dissolution. So what happened? It will just go through and through. And if that happens, no, the last portion that will receive those particles is the lung. And those cannot just be eliminated by the lung, lalo na pag mga large particles. Those large particles can cause damage or injury to the lung. That's why it might cause pneumonia. Okay, aspiration pneumonia can become severe, which will lead to necrotizing pneumonia. Depende. Okay, kung paano na ngayon yung kanyang manifestation, okay, doon sa lung. Okay, so that is how atypical okay, atrophic rhinitis infections could also lead to more severe infections, starting from the rhinitis, okay, the atrophic rhinitis. Okay. Okay, these are the sequels of rhinitis. These are the sinuses, the guttural pouch, and the lymph nodes. So ito naman, since meron tayong guttural pouch, we are talking about horses. Okay. So there are several sequels to nasal infections and rhinitis. And these can spread to the sinusitis, to the brain, okay, to the guttural pouch, or to the adjacent lymph node. Now, for the sinuses, syempre, it is a pathogens, no? It can cause sinusitis. Now, for the brain, particularly in the lamina cribosa, so in the yun, yung near portion of the site of infection, so this one, it might cause meningitis and encephalitis. So in the meninges, so that is inflammation of the meninges, okay, and the brain for the encephalitis. Other than that, so we have what we call openings or communications to the ear, okay, the inner ear and the eustachian tube, which could cause otitis. So moreover, we have also the guttural pouch if the affected animal is a horse. Okay, you have the guttural pouch mycosis or guttural pouches infection, which really cause guttural pouch empyema. So empyema is the collection of abscesses, okay, or the pus or abscess in a cavity. So since the guttural pouch is cavity in horses, that it can lead to these manifestations. Okay, and lastly is the adjacent lymph node, okay, from the origin of infection. So since it is identified here, the cerebropharyngeal lymph node is affected, then it could cause lymphadenitis. Now, if I ask you what specific lymph node is affected, that is your retropharyngeal lymph nodes. Okay? Okay, I guess I need to cut our discussion here. It's already 9 o'clock and I know you have another class. Hello, can you still hear me?
Yes po, Doc.
Yes. Okay, hindi ko alam kung anong slide yun ako natapos. But then, I will upload this one. I forgot to upload yata yung isa. So, I will upload this one para meron na kayong idea. But you have all this in your LRP. It's just a matter of parang references while you do the review. Okay? So, see you Monday. Okay, for our discussions. But before discussions, I might give you the quiz. And then afterwards, we will use all for the discussions ng respiratory system.
Doc, what time po next sa Monday, Doc?
Pagkatapos ng ano tawag dito? Ng flag ceremony. Kasi hanggang, kung hindi abot ng 8, o di mag-start. Basta after ng flag ceremony, makauwi lang ako dito. Diretso tayo ng discussions natin. So, sabi natin, bigyan ko kayo ng allowance hanggang 8, hanggang 8:15 to 8. Basta 8:15, between 8 to 8:30 siguro yun. Para may allowance. Okay? So, thank you very much for today. So, kung naka-record dyan, you just post and para do sa reference. By the way, medyo humihingi din yung yung sa 4B ko. Kung okay lang naman sa inyo, natanong ko na kay Miss Nicole kung pwede kayong mag-share dun sa video natin. Okay lang ba? Kung okay lang sa inyo, okay lang. Para they can also follow our discussion. Wala talaga akong estudyante. O sige na. Okay, so thank you very much for today. Good morning and have your weekend good and healthy. Okay, thank you very much and bye-bye.
Thank you po, Doc.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you po, Doc.